moment, let's just imagine how is it that projects sometimes don't go so right? This is a picture I grabbed from the recent Queensland Health payroll implementation that didn't go so well. For those of you in other states, you've probably heard about it. It got a lot of media attention in Queensland for a number of months, and it's still a work in progress. Probably nearly a year later now after implementation. And if we think about it, suffice to say that organisations that use a structured approach to management will outperform those that do. I don't think anyone would really argue with that, but let's just talk about some of the benefits for a moment that you actually yield, because I think often it's one of the challenges that I've certainly experienced personally, and I know it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of working with stakeholders in businesses, and it takes an iterative process, is really understanding the benefits. I think one of the first key ones is that change management, if you're trying to realize target benefits, change management is a significant value add to help you increase the uptake of whatever it is that you're trying to implement by way of the project and reduce the costs associated with implementation. I think another key benefit is that it is a proven methodology that increases engagement and it increases productivity, because we know through evidence that the more engaged a person is, the more they want to give of themselves to a job, the better they perform. And the better they perform, the more productive they are, and the more successful, the more viable, the more profitable the business will be. And that might mean you've got happier customers if you work in a local government environment, and service delivery is a critical thing, and timeliness is a critical thing. If you work in a regulatory environment, then that might mean you've got tighter controls and governance. If you work in a manufacturing or product-oriented environment, that might mean you get things done quicker, cheaper, to the same quality. I think one of the other things too is that sometimes what we don't appreciate in our roles, or certainly speaking from my opportunity as a consultant, where I get in and see how lots of different businesses go about doing work and doing projects, is when they invest the time and the effort, there is a legacy that remains. And that legacy means the internal capability and the readiness of the business and the people to maintain a momentum. I'm a little reluctant to use the word embed the results, because sometimes you embed something and then it's only going to be a year or two later you have to go and unembed it and change it again. That's not to say that embedment isn't a good outcome, but I think we just got to be careful with that sometimes. I think the legacy of leaving a business better off for having participated in an initiative or a project is one of the legacies that I only see change management having the capability to deliver. I'm not saying project management can't do it. Sure, great project managers will deliver, but change management as a purpose-built methodology is just fantastic. Now, how are we going out there, folks? Are there any questions at all? I've got my questions dashboard open. If someone would like to tap in, feel free at any point. I'm happy to keep moving on, and I've probably got about 10 to 15 minutes more content, and then if people would like to jump in there, I'm happy to take them. Okay, now, who's felt like this person? You're probably on the end of today thinking, hey, this is great, this is fantastic, really interested to know how to go about doing it. How do we do that? Okay, now I'm just got a question from Bill Sinnott, and Bill's asked why. I'm just going to see if I can unmute. Just hang on a sec there, folks. Okay. And if I can see how to unmute, I will certainly unmute. Okay. And I'm new with this tool, so Bill, sorry if I've got you muted. If you could type in a question, I'd be more than happy to have a look. Okay. All right. So, all right. What strategies? The question is, what strategies do you suggest in communicating to stakeholders? Yeah, well, communications is a really interesting one. I probably the interesting thing that I think relates to the picture that you've got in front of you at the moment is what and that was from Catherine. Sorry, Catherine, I've got your question there. What do we do by way of comms? Well, there's a couple of ways we can approach comms. At the moment, I'm working on a project to tell you a story, and I said to the project team, it's pretty important we put some comms out about this particular initiative. And the desire of the project team was, we're about to change the entire leadership model for an organisation of 16,000 people. There are about 3,000 to 4,000 people within that business that under the new leadership model have been deemed as leaders, and they're at various levels of leadership. Strategic leaders who are the senior executives. Then there's business leaders who are like sort of those direct reports, general managers, and then there's the team leaders and supervisory staff, and then underneath that there's a whole swag of people who are in branches and selling insurance and so on. Now, the question was asked, what's the best way to communicate the change? And we sat down as a team and we thought, okay, well, let's try it both ways. Let's do some comms. Let's do some formal comms and let's use some viral comms. And it became very clear that, to me, the organisation was, while its desire was to change and embrace the change and share the change and communicate the change, it struck me very quickly that their intent was light years ahead of their culture. And the culture was very much one of, and it's changing significantly and very quickly, I might add. It was very much one of, if we want a message to go to a business, it goes through the head of that business unit, and that head of the business unit trickles it down, and then once that gets trickled down, then that goes to the supervisor, and the supervisors trickle it on again. Now, interestingly, we've got on board there, and I've used a tool called Yammer, and the tool's being used already throughout the business for various purposes. But Yammer's a great tool because it doesn't care what level of work you're at in terms of, are you a leader, are you on a headset selling insurance all day, or are you a senior executive? There's some great tools out there, and I think the key thing to consider is, what is your message? First of all, if you're clear about your message, the next question you've got to consider with communication is, what are the various channels that you're going to use? Okay, and once you've got clarity about the channels you're going to use, what are the audiences? And there can be an iteration between those three things in terms of your message, your market, and your channel. But I think what's really important is to consider, in terms of coming up with strategies for communications, sometimes I think the best way to do it is whatever you've tried in the past, whatever worked, keep doing that. Whatever didn't work, try something different. And the more that we open up the communications channels, the more likely we are to have a successful communication. I think using this particular model here, one of the points that I want to illustrate when we dive into, how do we go about engaging people and sort of getting them on board with change and so on, is appreciating that it is a teachable thing. And if it's teachable, and if we've got coachable participants who are keen and interested, then they can learn. And the three levels, I suppose, that we have to consider with change, and again, that will affect the way we communicate the change and the way that we go about facilitating the change, is we've got to appreciate that change is happening at least in three different contexts from my point of view. The first context is at the enterprise level. Now, if we look at enterprise capability, then these are things like your strategy, your structure, the way you go about doing change in your business. Think for a moment about your particular situation right now. Do you have the types of collateral? Do you have the business assets that allow you to very quickly and succinctly conceptualize. If someone says, hey, I've got this great idea, we can save a whole load of money and do a faster workflow if we do an X, Y, Z. Have you got the collateral and the assets and the structures that say, yep, that's fantastic, I love that idea too. Let me just put it through the filter of some of our change thinking, and let's do a quick risk assessment on that to actually say what kind of sponsorship do we need to support that initiative. What's the best? Do we use more of like an agile approach to making it like an iterative, get out there, get some results, get some quick wins, get buy-in, be viral, be a little more experiential? Or is it more, no, we need governance frameworks, we need structures and committees and reference groups? That to me, all of that work there requires enterprise capability. Now, if you don't have that at the top, then there's going to be difficulties from the get-go. Pardon me. Once there's that clarity from the top, then there's got to be the systems and processes in place to facilitate that. These are the frameworks. These are the models. These are the certain ways, the techniques. And if you like, this is where the enterprise intent starts to operationalize into the way you go about doing change in the business. And this has to do with the way the business is structured in its hierarchy, in the way your forums and various working groups and the memberships of who gets distributed what messages and in what fashion. This is really where things start to get operationalized from an enterprise level. And the third level at which change is really important, and the area that I really want to put a ring around and focus in on for the rest of today, is this individual space. The ability to draw upon an individual's personal knowledge. The extent of people's experience and, if you like, their risk appetite. The ways in which they go about leading and managing change. This is all very influenced by, I would put to you, the enterprise capability and the systems and processes in which that individual participates. Now, there will always be circumstances where people struggle or people are challenged, or there'll be, if you like, those influencers, the kingpins, the sneezers, whatever you want to call them, those early adopters who get out there and shake the tree and get lit up and set things on fire. There'll always be those people at either end of the spectrum. But for the rest, the ones who are, if you like, sometimes we call them the swingers, the ones that can go either way depending on the change, they are very much going to be influenced by the things above them at the enterprise level, at a systemic level. And if we're not careful, according to their own beliefs, and that can sometimes be superstition and folklore, what the prime opportunity we have here, though, is to get on board and actually present a way in which people can do change. And what